All right.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to DNA's August 2026 webinar, Creative Blueprints that physically raise capital. We're going to be speaking about funnels, the closing process of many of these digital marketing campaigns, social media posts, email drip systems, webinars, articles, videos, press, all of the things that take place during the second touch point, the seventh touch point, the 17th touch point that convert audiences. We work on a high volume of these investor acquisition campaigns that convert investors, but both retail for a few $1,000s, but thousands of those individuals. Accredited on Reg D 506C campaigns is going to be a big focus of today's conversation. We're talking about six-figure, seven-figure transactions here. Being able to put a post, an article together that closes that type of investment into a deal, and joined here by some of the team members that spearhead these operations within the organization, within the agency, that make this all happen. Mark Laufgraben, our editor, who looks at every piece of content going out. Going to hear some in-depth thought processes towards what the target audience is thinking, how this piece of content, this visual, this copy is going to stand out among other investment opportunities that are coming across their desk, and what gets them to say, you know what, I'm going to put in my personal information, I'm going to put in my financial information, I'm going to send money right now. Also, Jack Sweeney, graphic designer, creative expert extraordinaire, going to be talking about what goes on in the ideation stages of what goes into the visuals. Jack, Mark, you want to give some brief introductions while I pull up the deck? I know, I gave some high regards there, but let the audience connect with you a little here.
You want to get us started?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you for the great introduction, Jason. Been with DNA a little while now, working in creative with Brendan, who's the creative director. He's really shepherded me along and taught me everything I know, and pulling bits of copy hooks from Mark and ways to make a sale from Jason, and just learning really the entire ecosystem of what it takes to get an investment, all the touch points, all the ways you gotta get involved. It really takes a whole team. So that's what I love about this. That's what I love about digital marketing, and just happy to be here. I'll pass it to Mark.
Yeah, I'm Mark Laufgraben. I'm the content editor here at DNA. Every word is a tool, and we've got a whole box of them to work with for the purpose of soliciting capital for your raise. It's a very important job to make sure that any bit of content, no matter where it's located, whether it's an email drip or copy on an ad, is laser focused on getting the attention of investors, of stopping that scroll, of getting them clicking and converting. And if Jason is the brains and Jack is the talent, then I am stuck being the looks today.
Well said and accurate as always there, Mark. I get asked about different types of return on ad spend, marketing efficiency ratio, cost of capital questions constantly. I hear them in my sleep. And I have to point back to the creative. I would say it's in multiple categories here. Let's say I'm managing an advertising campaign. Advertising is a scalable way to buy traffic from very specific, very targeted audiences. Traffic, that's getting someone in your doors, getting someone in your investor pitch presentation. And you have audiences, you have creatives, and you have the funnel. Uh, the creative and the funnel is all going to thrive on what's going to those messaging and visual drips. So, method for creating cohesive visual language that encourages action. Well said, Jack, in this deck here. A strong opportunity does not market itself. Again, I'm focusing on what's actually going to take place in each of these touch points. I was on a call earlier, and it was a debate whether better product or better marketing wins market share. I think when I add the word market share, it's pretty obvious. It's not always the premium product. I've seen amazing products die with no eyeballs around them. I've seen amazing investment opportunities bring in no funds without the right marketing behind it. So marketing is sales at a mass level. Uh, Jack was saying something about me selling, me marketing. Marketing is sales at a mass level. Traffic's only the beginning. That's how we build out these campaigns. It's how we use our superpower of getting people excited about things to resonate through these digital systems and be able to sell at a mass level. Larger checks bring deeper research and more skepticism. It's a longer sales cycle. You have to account for what's going to happen in the content more so than if it's a smaller investment. I'll hear these big real estate developers say, we have a $2 million minimum on our Reg D. We don't need this content stuff. I'll talk to them 6 months later. They tend to tell me the same amounts that have been raised, meaning they're not really raising. I'll then see a group uh, like Avadane Graphene that oversubscribed at their $5 million raise in 37 days last month. They saw an investor come in for over $800,000 from an ad that didn't even speak with them offline. Uh, it's where these philosophies come from. It's where these findings of, okay, if you're asking for a lower minimum, you're actually going to see less research take place and even more come in on the transaction in many cases. If you're asking for more upfront, it brings more of that skepticism. So investors compare public markets. They'll stack the chips that they want accordingly. But look how busy a $500 minimum blackjack table is, or a $5 minimum blackjack table. I don't even know if those exist anymore at a casino are. People are still placing $500 bets at that $5 table, but this is all to point at some of the things we're going to get in depth here about. Investors compare public markets, private offerings, and competitors. Mark, where does this 506C rule fit? This, of course, allows for solicitation of accredited investors. But why would someone use 506C, and how does it compare to the other side of Reg D, 506B, as well as regulation crowdfunding and regulation A+? We're talking Title 2, 3, and 4 here.
Sure. The key is uh, whether or not you want general solicitation in your advertising. It can be, and that makes, of course, an enormous difference, because the way you're going to handle your raise, if you're going to be soliciting to the world at large, is radically different from one-to-one solicitation. What we do, of course, as a marketing agency by and large, is focused on getting people in general, getting their attention without all the advantages of one-to-one personal contact. It can be wonderful if we can get there, but a lot of the time, the first time that people hear about raises from us will be when they see an ad or receive an email from a list, or even read about it through previous published or earned media. So figuring out what you're looking for is very important when you're deciding which rule to apply for your raise.
And we'll see side by side Reg CF, Reg D campaigns. And by the way, we're not lawyers. This isn't legal advice. You're going to want to speak with your lawyer. You're going to want to speak with your accountant. Important for us to mention this in the marketing side, that we are looking at the marketing angle of this. But we got started on Reg D 506C campaigns in 2015. My background in advertising, started utilizing household income, net worth audience data. This allows you to go beyond your existing network. 506B, you have to have a pre-existing relationship from the day that the form is filed, and you have more room to bring in some non-accredited investors, but you can't market beyond that network. Reg CF, this takes in accredited and non-accredited investors up to $5 million at this point. Regulation A plus, similar, but up to $75 million. The filing processes and audits are dramatically different. I'll see many groups wait to do a Reg A and then raise less than $5 million on their Reg A. In many cases, they could have done a Reg CF. Even if they wanted to get above that 5 million, potentially could have done a Reg CF side by side Reg D. There are different interpretations. I've heard some lawyers say you can't do a side by side Reg CF Reg D. I've heard some say it's fine. Drive the traffic to one landing page, let the investor choose which way to go, driving them to a Reg CF or Reg D page to follow. I've heard others say that's not compliant. So very important that you consult with your legal counsel about this. Jack, this seems like an appropriate page for you.
Oh, fantastic. Every campaign needs a creative plan. So in this webinar, we're going to be talking a lot about, especially with these raises that require accredited investors, that we're talking a lot about the right click. It's not just any click. It's got to be, you're paying for this traffic, so you want it to be your target audience. You don't want to have something that's too flashy, that's just attracting everyone, because then you're paying for traffic that won't convert. So you really want to upfront be thorough in defining your brand's voice and defining what you're trying to do, the kind of people you're trying to attract. And you want to start that early before you even start raising a penny, really. Like, you need to, I mean, the brand is so essential. Like, you may not have an opportunity to reinvent. I mean, we'll talk a bit about testing. You can certainly try some different styles, but when it comes down to like the big things like fonts, colors, general feel, the voice, are you casual? Are you super professional? You might want to lean a little bit more super professional for these kinds of raises, but it's really about that cohesiveness across the channels, telling a unified story. People are they're going to do their research. They're going to do their due diligence, especially with these bigger check sizes. So it's not there. I mean, Jason did mention someone converted off an ad, but they're seeing ad. It takes an entire ecosystem. They see the ad, and then they get to the landing page, and then they get an email, and then they get all these different channels. You really need to upfront set in stone, maybe some soft stone. Um, this is what I'm about. This is what we look like. This is what we sound like. And the way to really get ahead of that is identify your personas, which in this case, we're talking about accredited investors. So that's a particular kind of person. And then secondly, you want to see what your other industry leaders, competitors are doing before you even get started. See what's out there, see what they're doing. Don't mimic it, but see what works. And yeah, start testing that. So you got to have a creative plan up front.
By the way, we're going to get into planning here next. You have to be doing the right competitor marketing audits. So we'll speak about this a bit further, but something really easy to do right now. I don't know if it's a good rule to tell someone to do something while a webinar that could divert attention, but if you go to Facebook ads library, you could Google it, throw it into your Claude DeepSeek perplexity. Someone told me yesterday, Claude's dead. DeepSeek, it's the only thing you should be using. Uh, Facebook ads library, facebook.com/ads/library, I believe. Type in accredited investor, and you'll see all the ads that use the words accredited investor. Don't select the accredited investor page. You're searching by keywords, and you'll see the creative, the messaging, the visuals that accredited investors you're going to be going after probably have it coming across their desk right now. And I don't believe you can really put together a strong creative plan, a strong marketing plan, strong investor journey without having understanding of the target audience. And to understand the target audience means you have to know what they're looking at, what they're consuming on a daily basis. So why are they going to choose you over an investment opportunity that gives them a 24% equity multiple, IRR even? But why are they going to choose you against other deals, other teams, other publisher endorsed offerings? Uh, instead of yours. You have to build creative that's as strong, if not stronger. Mark, what does planning this investor journey consist of?
Sure. I mean, well, let's look at what we've got here. We mentioned that larger investments take more touch points. And, what do we mean by touch points? We mean, times when you're encountering information about the raise. You know, that just stands to reason, right? The more money that people are considering investing, the more convincing they're going to need to take, basically, if you in order before you get success. What you're generally trying to do is your storytelling. Um, Investors start knowing nothing about you at all in many cases. And you can't just get people to give you your money with like a single flashy image, like a couple sentences of convincing argumentation. You need to lead them on a little journey. So when we call it the investor journey, it's really not the loose metaphor it sounds like, because they're really going to be going from touch point to touch point, each time learning something different, designed to bring them into that funnel and get them converting. The way we do this is with a narrative. We have different goals for every piece of content that we create, for every creative. Um, you might think, oh, okay, when I make a piece of content, when I make a piece of creative, what's its purpose? Well, its purpose is to convert, right? So everything I make should be aimed at getting people to convert. This is not so, because nobody converts based on, just one or two touch points. It doesn't happen. Instead, every piece of content that you create has to be designed based on the psychological positioning of the investor in that journey. So, the first thing that you need to do is you need to make sure that they understand who you are and what you do. And that comes across to your brand style. That's going to be reflected all the way down the line, and you need to establish that early. Next, you need some kind of hook, something about your offering that they just can't get out of their minds. They see it and it makes them think. Um, there's a million different things that could be. If your company is already very successful, it could be like, a couple of fantastic years of returns. If your company is only starting out, it could be like some sort of intellectual property that you have, a moat that solves a problem that they've never seen a solution to, that they think could be worth a ton of money. But you need something to act as that hook. That's what we mean when we say your offering should be perceived as irresistible.
Irresistible. They cannot forget this investment. They have to move forward. They have to move forward now. That now piece is so important. Even if they tell themselves now, it's still probably going to be a few more touch points. But without that feeling, the likelihood they're coming back is rather low. The ad itself is a journey. Just that quick little snippet that comes across your mobile device, computer screen, television, the YouTube ad. You're not reaching YouTube premium users that way, but you get the idea. It's got its own balance to it. The hook, the context, the call to action. You try to run an ad without a hook, just with some information, it's probably losing that context. Not a strong enough call to action. The audience doesn't know where to go. So, hierarchy in action. Excuse me, Jack. It's a similar names. Jack, do you want to speak about what you did on some of these ads here?
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, so just speaking back to that, we don't have to go back to the last slide, but your eyes, whether you know it or not, are taking a very quick journey. Scroll down, left, right, and you like to speak in a meta sense, like on the larger investor journey, it's like a smaller funnel, it's a funnel within a funnel within a funnel. So here within an ad, you're starting with a very small funnel, which is actually like I'm scrolling, pull me into this funnel. What is it about this that's going to make it so irresistible that I need to stop the scroll? That's a phrase we use a lot here. Um, so we call that visual hierarchy. Um, in these ads, we've got a couple of good examples of visual hierarchy, some hooks. Maybe Mark can speak to like more of the copy orientation of the hooks. But so for Mode Mobile, we've got invest alongside top VCs. So we've in that phrase, we've put in context what this is about. This is probably some kind of investment opportunity because it says invest. It's almost like the call to action is built into the into the header there. And then we have in small text, you probably aren't able to even read it on your screen, is a list of a lot of venture capitalists. But it's not about who they actually are. It's just that they take up space and there's a lot of them. So you're kind of thinking about when you're moving through that ad quickly, that's like the social proof almost. Like you see what it's about. You see that there's a lot of people, entities interested in whatever is going on here. And then it's almost like the entire thing is a hook. And then at the bottom, join over 60,000 investors in Mode Mobile. Boom, I'm sold. Irresistible. 60,000 people are doing this, including the top VCs that are above that. So just dug into that one a bit. I'll move
That's an
through.
issue that's successful with Reg CF, Regulation A plus, Regulation D, all three of the filings. There's generalizations that issuers are only applicable to one filing, or that Reg D is superior, or Regulation A plus is superior. Uh, there's Reg CF issuers that have raised more than the majority of Regulation A plus, at least single campaigns across their Reg CFs. Um, and like I mentioned, some of the CF, some of the A pluses could have actually filed in the CF. But Mode Monday ad report, they had raised over $9 million from Monday to Monday, well over $37 million for their current live Regulation A plus campaign. This next one that you're going to look at that Jack's going to get into detail about, also over 10 million on the Reg D, one of the few issuers to oversubscribe at $5 million this year. Less about the filing, more about the creative, more about the messaging, more about what the audience is converting, why the audience is converting. Jack, what can you say about the world of hydraulics, robotics and hydraulics?
And I could talk all day about hydraulics. No. Um, well, so here we have a visual hook. I chose this ad because it's a visual hook. This is actually a Guinness World Record that they were able to, this arm lifts more than any other hydraulic system, I believe, pounds per inch or whatever it is. And and that's just a great example of a visual hook. And you have to put the context. This is another example of where you really need to quickly, if you have something that's product oriented, for example, they make these hydraulic systems, um, you got to make sure that they know that you're not selling the actual systems themselves. So but it operates as a great visual hook. So that stops the scroll, 85% subscribed. Well, what does that mean? Well, if I'm being targeted and being used by, an incredible uh, you know, predetermined list that like DNA has, you probably know what that means. And then 1,600 plus investors. Okay, I'm sold. And then this last one, I can, Mark, if you want, maybe talk about like what is it about posing a question in a headline, robot weeded corn in Whole Foods? Question mark. What is it about that makes that really strong, hooks you?
Well, it's actually, yeah, it's a wonderful little technique that has a very simple answer. Um, our brains naturally want to come up with an answer to a question. Uh, when we talk about stopping the scroll, what we mean by the scroll is them ceasing to look and engage with your content or creative and moving on. You're gone like you never were. The thing about a question is it keeps it going. Our brains naturally try to come up with something, even just a moment worth of answer. And that something gives you another precious microsecond of them focusing on your content. And that is what you want. That's what you need. Um, so anything you can do to get them focusing on your opportunity, is a wonderful thing.
Also,
So
campaign of
here,
significant amounts raised, combined full 5 million within the 12-month period, and now in the test waters for Regulation A plus.
So, and other things that we did here, we focused on that it's robot weeded, which is, of course, the core of their offering, and it's an extraordinary thing. I think not too many of us have experienced robots working in farm fields. And we've got the great picture of, I believe that's Botany there, their Botany platform. So, it's all designed to try to do something. Oh, and finally, yes, can't forget the Whole Foods Market logo. The thing about having a brand is that you've worked with or partnered with is that allows you to sort of ride on the brand's recognition. People see the Whole Foods slogan, they think, well, I know Whole Foods, I trust Whole Foods, I like Whole Foods, and a little of that can't help but rub off onto Greenfield Robotics here. So all these things put together, can really help get people interested.
Stop the right scroll. A hook is only as strong as the type of traffic it solicits. Well-executed creative may sacrifice flashiness for facts, bold stats, figures, validation, and signs of momentum. You can see here for 9 Capital, a differentiated private market opportunity as featured in Finance, Global Banking and Review, Global Banking and Finance Review, reserved for accredited investors. So using that quote as a landmark statement to drive audiences in, combined with where it was featured, the third-party validator. We don't believe what we see online. I think we used the word skeptical earlier. We're skeptical on investment opportunities as a whole. It can be, through your bank, you're still going to have a lot of question marks for them. So to be able to show that really goes a long way. The ads we were looking at prior to this, an overwhelming amount of third-party validation and new publishers speaking about them every month and marketing tactics to produce that because they know how important it is. It's not being able to say, hey, 2 years ago, this publisher said this about us, so we're good. It's having something new to add to that story each week, building on top of it, and stopping that scroll. I was asked about social media advertising earlier. Like, is digital marketing really just social media advertising? And I'd say, it's marketing using paid advertising placements as well as organic content placements across every touch point, or as many touch points as possible of your target audience. Social advertising is just where we see favorable click-through rate, favorable cost per lead rate, favorable conversion rates of investments, closing rates at that. So we gravitate towards what's driving the best. And we spend hours a day as a society on social media. I could pull some exact averages from that, but something else fun to try today. Ask someone you're talking to how much time they spend on social media a day. Ask them to pull up their screen time app and look at it. I mean, there's literally, we've done this in house, and people hours on single apps was questioning what parts of the day that came in at that. And they reminded me some of its research for work. But you get the idea. With that amount of time spent, we're zoning out. We're letting our hair down. We're finding things to research and read into and catching up with old friends just by looking at their pictures. So if you have an ad placement that's right in the middle of that, every 5-10 posts, and it may not even be easily identifiable as an ad, you're going to look to see a higher click-through rate and conversion rate than other places. But you still have to ask yourself that question: how am I going to stop the scroll? Get someone to click on this, get someone to spend the right time on the landing page and put in their personal information, and then be receptive to call scheduling and the follow-up process for a Reg D and actually move forward on an investment. How do you find that right person? How do you speak to them the right way? Imagine if this ad looked like it was created by a 6th grader. What is that? 11-year-old kid. For most campaigns, you could have the right investor and they're just going to keep scrolling. It may even turn them off towards engaging with your content, certainly investing from that point forward. So how your ad looks, what you're showing to them is the brand voice. It may sound like marketing talk, like we're in a college course about logos and branding. Very much matters. The top Reg D issuers. If you did that exercise earlier, maybe you're still doing it right now. Facebook Ads Library, Accredited investors. You're going to see creatives that look great and are indicative of a multi-billion-dollar brand fund, multi-$100 million fund. You're going to see groups on there that are saying they have a $300 million valuation, and you have real question marks about it. And that probably shows up in their prospective investors' minds. So stop the right scroll with good creative, good branding, good third-party validation, intriguing thoughts that bring people in, and making sure you're mentioning something about accredited investors if it's a Reg D campaign, so you're weeding out ineligible prospects. Even with the right targeting, they tend to slip through. Next, landing page. Conversion rate, single most important metric of a digital marketing campaign. Conversion rate being, a lead for many of these Reg D campaigns. Again, we're working on ones right now where the investment can take place, the transaction without an offline conversation. For some brands that works, for some brands that does not. But still would tell you should be A/B testing landing pages in those scenarios. A webinar sign up, if anything. Mark, what does that page structure consist of?
Sure. I mean, we talk about, having we give a basic structure here, but I want to give, before we start, a free tip to everybody watching this who might be making their own landing page. Think of it this way. When you get prospective investors to your page, at the top of the page, you are never going to have as many eyes on your page as you do right there. That is the most important part of your page. That is the place where so many of their decisions are being made. Even if the decision is only a halfway one to keep reading, you need them to make it. So because of that, you have to really go over the top of your investment page with a fine-toothed comb and try to see things not from your perspective, who already knows all the ins and outs of your business and of your raise, but from the perspective of a prospective investor. So, okay, let's look at what we've got here.
That is the hero text. The
Yep.
percentage of people who scroll past that and get below the fold, if you will, old advertising, newspaper terminology there, but used for digital. Big drop off, actually. And so you want to use visual hierarchy there too, with headers and really asking yourself, similar to what Jack was breaking down earlier, like where do my eyes go first? Where are they going to go next? You are the architect here.
So first thing, we say here, investment thesis and why now? What's going on here? I mean, you need to inform them about who and what you are and why they should care. And you need to do it as quickly and as concisely as possible. And the reason why I say that second part of it has a very important purpose. A lot of people sort of get lost in the weeds talking about how great their business or product is. They because they find themselves trying to sell to their normal buyers. But that is not who is at this page. These are investors. They do need to understand who you are. They do need to understand what you do, and they do need to understand why it matters, how it's going to make them money. But you need to get those first things out of the way and then go right into all the advantages that you have as an investment. That is what's going to get them to buy in this instance. That's what buying here means. So then we go into the business model and differentiation. How does your business work? I mean, this is all part about understanding you, and as they go down the page, developing trust in you. No one is going to give you their money if they don't trust you. Next, and that's exactly why we're going on to number 3, which is traction and third-party proof. What is the purpose of these things? Why does your traction matter? It seems obvious, right? Like, showing, oh, well, we've made X amount of, dollars. We have such and such letters of intent or, contracts coming up. Why does it really matter? And why did we pair that with third party proof? It's because they accomplished the same goal. They get people to believe in you and trust your business. They see that you've made money. That says there's a market for what you're doing, and you are meeting it. They see third party proof and they think, oh, there are people who are working with this person. They wouldn't be working with them if they couldn't trust them, if they didn't think they'd profit from working for them. Then, so in a way, whereas one or two are the crucial hook to get them reading, three is sort of make it or break it time on your page. They need to trust you and believe in you, or you will never get their money. This isn't like a product they're just going to buy, a new juicer or something like that, where they're like, well, okay, maybe we'll see if it's good or not. No one is going to invest and get what they think is an empty promise. Finally, team use of proceeds and milestones. These things are, on the one hand, the team section is just, being like, look, this is who we are. This is what we've done. These are reasons why you can feel secure about us. But use of proceeds and milestones just demonstrate that you have a plan. You're not just saying, give me your money. You have a very clear place of where that money is going so that they can judge it. It can be like, that makes a lot of sense. That is just what I would do if I were in their situation. And, number 5 is mostly boilerplate stuff. Of course, you have to talk about the risks inherent to raising capital. And you have to figure out some questions that you want to get ahead of. But I mean, there is a reason why this stuff's at the bottom. It's not as important as the others. It's just stuff you need to make sure you take care of.
Sounds fundamental. I could tell you it's not in every offering page, and it has to pass the glance test. You have to allow the audience to go through the page, go through that visual hierarchy, see what's going to convert the best. See what's of interest to them, and then go in to read more information. You're then looking at the analytics on the page to see what's converting the best and doing more of what's working. Cancer drug pipeline backed by existing revenue. Not just a concept. NextGen Scientific runs an oncology drug program on top of a supplement business that already sells product, one company, two engines, built around a single patented plant. Led by Dr. Gene Zaid. Further down the page, you can see a lot more information on Dr. Zaid, the chemist who built and sold Jack Chemical to CES Energy Solutions for roughly $300 million. It says something right there, right? Before turning a plant from his homeland into a cancer therapeutics program. A lot of thought process went into how to write that. Before turning a plant from his homeland into a cancer therapeutics program. I could tell you all the different options and variants and why this was chosen, and how it could attract a variety of credit investor audiences versus just one. Invest now, book a call, 2 different options. Phase 1 complete, 8 tumor types. Okay. 1.7 million revenue today, patent estate to 2038. And then you can see the offering terms, verify and invest. Got a video here. So it's a powerful landing page. And think of how much information is communicated here with the Reg D and the different categories. And you get to control the narrative. You get to take the prospective investor through the experience that you want, that you design. This is your space. This is above the fold. I haven't scrolled down here yet. As Mark was saying, this first part is going to be seen more than any other aspect of the page. So use it wisely. It is expensive real estate, if you will, and could be the make or break on whether an investor moves forward. But to Mark and Jack's points, it's not going to be the first visit that they invest. You want it to be irresistible. Maybe this is. But it's probably not going to be the session where you complete your investment. probably look to the book a call option at that. You have to bring audiences back and back and back and back. Higher the transactional value, longer the sales cycle, as a rule of thumb. Giving the thumbs up as well too, because it's the right way to think about it. So how do you bring people back? Retargeting is a term used in advertising. You want to stay top of mind with content that reaffirms. Uh, Jack, do you want to go further into this page and talk about what good retargeting ad consists of, a good email follow-up drip sequence, what that entails, other types of third-party content pieces or long-form content pieces, and how that brings people back to the page? How do you retarget page visitors effectively?
Yeah, happy to talk about that. So when you're retargeting someone, you're targeting someone with an ad with creative that has interacted with something of yours before. So you know something about them. You know something about when you're doing the creative that's going to be put into a retargeting pile, it's going to, or audience, it's you can design with that in mind, and that gives you actually a lot of leverage and a lot of power, because you know that they know a little something about you, like something about that first hook got them. And then all you're trying to do now is as they're on that journey, you're just I use the word reaffirms here, reaffirming them, this is irresistible because of this. This is irresistible because of this. Here's the traction. Here's what we're doing. So it's very important whether you're doing your own marketing or you're hiring a consultant to do the digital marketing, that you take advantage of retargeting, because there's so much power in knowing even more about your audience. And really, that's what makes digital marketing beautiful, is you can test and see what works with what audiences, but specifically with retargeting, this is where you reaffirm team credentials and relevant execution history. So on the last, for NextGen, which is an account I'm working on, which is that page we just visited, we're talking about the dual revenue model that they have. We're talking about that previous exit that the founder had. We're talking about all these kinds of things, saying, look, this is still here. You interacted with this. Here's another reason why you should interact again. And maybe they opened up the link and the first time baby started crying or whatever. So you go and take care of the baby, you come back, and now your mind's on something else.
Jack, is that a joke about me? Because I have a young baby at home and she cries on calls sometimes.
Did you see I was looking right at you? I was looking right at the camera, which is you.
I
Uh,
usually say they're in line at the bank or,
yeah,
wife's
yeah,
calling them for dinner, but I like that analogy. I haven't heard that one before.
yeah. So baby's crying, gotta take care of the baby. But
Otherwise, you'd invest right then.
yeah, yeah, otherwise, yeah. Uh, we like to have fun here at DNA. So, other ways you can reaffirm documented partnerships. We do this with doing this with a space company. All the companies that you're not riding on the coattails, but you're showing, like, hey, like when we had the Whole Foods example with Greenfield, is you're saying like, hey, we're relevant to these other things that are also very successful, and a rising tide lifts all ships. And press and testimonials, for example, it can be completely organic. Maybe you're so amazing, you're getting picked up, and you're gonna want to pull quotes from that and use the logo. But if you can also pay for placement. You can reach out to investors and get testimonials. There's so much you can do to create, and that's what the next slide is about, is creating motion. Is even when it feels stagnant, you're like especially with some of these um, accredited campaigns, you're really putting a lot of effort into every touch point and having to reinforce, reinforce, reinforce. And it's like, how do you keep that noise going? So sometimes you have to not invent noise, but I have at the bottom here, pull out your phone and create a moment. Like, hey, I'm here in the office. We just, if I'm at the Rise's hydraulic factory, Hey, meet so and so who's working on the next version of this iteration of this hydraulic system or whatever. Just show that things are happening and just retarget, show that there's momentum, show that as Jason likes to say, the restaurant is full and busy. Isn't that right, Jason?
That's right. Empty
All right.
restaurant makes you feel weird. You may want to leave. It may affect your experience, and people are not flocking to empty restaurants. They're going to the ones with the line around the block.
That's right. But we actually had a great lunch at a fairly empty restaurant recently in the office, one of our office days. But anyway, that's aside from the point.
Midday, knowing the secret
Yeah,
spots, but
yeah,
yes.
that's right. The secret LA spots.
So I wanted to take a moment to just talk about this one because this one's near and dear to my heart. And I think it's very important for people who are raising funds too, because so often it can feel from your perspective you're just sort of waiting, right? You're waiting for good news, waiting for people to click, waiting for those conversions. Um, when I talked before about creating trust, we mentioned partnerships and we mentioned the traction you've developed. Well, what if you don't have a lot of partnerships? What if you don't have a lot of traction? Well, whether you do or you don't, one thing you absolutely can do is create motion. By constantly just getting out there and making videos of you as a founder, publishing articles, becoming a thought leader on LinkedIn, getting different journals to carry, your thought leadership, you're getting people to trust you because they see that you care. They see your action and they see that you are locked into your raise. And that gives them a reason to believe in you. The opposite is also absolutely true. If you just rest on your laurels and don't update your blog or ever post about your raise, they're going to be looking for this information and they're going to see nothing. Just going to see like dust and silence. And no one wants to put their money into that. That's their money. People don't want it to just be gone. They worked hard for it. So the creation of motion is something that you can do by doing these things and that can help build trust. And if you don't do it, conversely, it's going to cost you, even if you have good fundamentals, good partnerships, good traction.
Now, polishing every touch point. Fashion is never finished. Conversion rate optimization is never done. You want to continue to improve and improve and improve and rebirth, um, recreate yourself, polish every touch point, look worthy of investment, show there's momentum, there's traction. This is a moving ship hitting its destination with or without that prospective investor. Now's their opportunity to hop on board, but there's so much that is occurring. And every aspect, every milestone along the journey that you point at uh, can be enhanced. And over time, there's always greater levels of performance available with marketing. Vector logos and editable source files, original or licensed high resolution photography, these are musts. You have to reflect the value that you are stating your company, your fund, your investment opportunity is worth. 4K source video when practical with clean audio and captions. I mean, you could do this stuff on your phone. You could do this stuff with a $300 drone. It's not cost prohibitive anymore to put this stuff together, even very quickly at that. We're talking about selfie videos and different types of low production approaches at times here. And it works, it converts, it feels native on these social platforms and some of these other digital touch points. There's no reason you cannot be polished. Accurate export sizing for channels. No one wants to see a story ad on their mobile device where the text is cut off. It makes the brand feel unprofessional, makes it seem like they're not using real marketing. Visual legitimacy matters. And please, 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 don't allow your visuals to be perceived by the target audience as AI. I have to state that again. We live in a world where we are being overwhelmed with AI creatives. And it's the same AI, different access points in many cases, and it's the same style. That may be fine for, a local business putting a flyer up on their, store and their restaurant window. That may be fine for an invitation among family and friends. If you have $100 million round, show that a professional designer, videographer put this together. If you're using AI, great. You want to have the right captain for the ship. You want to, have the right expert behind the helm there, behind the wheel. They're going to be able to pinpoint things that you, as a non-designer, potentially may not be able to see. But at the same time, good AI usage, you cannot tell AI created that touch point. Every channel serves a purpose, from prospecting to credibility to follow up. This kind of reflects the marketing funnel. I mentioned that's the follow up system. In marketing, this term of funnel, picture a oil funnel, if you will. At the top is awareness, prospecting to build that awareness. Paid social ads can work here. Search advertising, both organic and paid, can work here. Publications talking about you, outbound emails, LinkedIn messages, different networking events, pitch events. This could bring in new prospects, new awareness. You then have the consideration stage. This is, press, thought leadership, podcast, strategic partners, those types of placements that really move people to the next stage, which is consideration before intent, even intent. You're seeing a big drop off from people who actually invest beyond those who intend to. So you want to have a good follow-up system with email, retargeting ads, text messages, maybe, automated SMS at that, webinars, pitch events, group pitches, investor relations, actual conversations with these prospects, compliantly, of course. But each one of these serves a purpose. You don't want, some of the prospecting tactics to be relied upon to have that follow-up and the actual conversion take place. So, Jack, why test creatives across different channels, especially if you know one's working? Why do you need variance in different A/B tests of different types of messaging and visuals?
Jason, I thought you'd never ask. Well, you want to test creatives, and Nikki is a pro at this. He's our media buyer here at DNA. You want to continually test creatives because you want to figure out what is working. And on the next slide, we'll see, you can see where things are not working.
But first, success leaves clues. We'll see that in our
Yeah,
competitor
success leaves.
audits, but
Yeah,
also
you
the creatives we're running. You want to make those data-driven decisions and basically understand the behavior that is moving audiences forward. But with that, this is what you're looking at, right?
yeah. So instead of, you know, one thing I'll say is when something can be successful and leave clues that it is successful, like let's say a high click-through rate. And that's great. It leaves the clue of, hey, that looks like a high number. To me, that's over 5% or whatever it is. But it might not be driving the right kind of traffic. So you gotta not only look for the clues that are unsuccessful, but also look for those clues that might be successful but are creating a drop-off in conversion. So here are some drop-offs where we can identify potentially where a problem might be. So low qualified engagement, that's something I was just talking about. This could be maybe too good of a hook, if there is such a thing, too good of a hook that doesn't speak to what is actually going on. So we've got this, am I going to buy corn in Whole Foods or am I investing in a robot that weeds the cornfields that puts the corn in Whole Foods? Like you need to be able to create that visual journey that allows the viewer to know what's going on. Clicks without page action, that would just be someone dropping off as soon as they get to the page. There's not a consistent visual journey. Leads without calls. This could be really a technical thing. It could be that someone doesn't want to immediately give you their information, so you may need to provide more trust, more third-party validation. Um, Calls without diligence. Um, Jason, you want to speak to that? Verification
Fit the
engagement.
thesis, the terms, or evidence. If there's too many surprises during the call, um, it means there wasn't enough information available, and or the prospect didn't do their diligence, wasn't easy enough for them to find. So you end up having to spend a lot more time in the education stage of that call, and the outcome is going to have a statistically lower conversion rate. Verification abandonment as well too. This is process friction. It's too long of a checkout for them, whether it's for a lead or an investment. You want to look at a streamlined process and journey there. Can mean the difference of a successful campaign and one where investors just kind of get fed up even at that intense stage, as mentioned, and don't move forward. And then diligence without funding. They seem to be deterred by the risk, the terms, the proof, or just the overall follow up system. And I want to throw some numbers at this and explain how important each one of these stages are. Because this page, if you took a screenshot of this and just worked on this for course correction, course improvement of your marketing campaign, you're going to be in a much better place to produce stronger results. When we're looking at a Reg D campaign, most of them work off this lead generation, investor relations process. So you're using these top of funnel channels. We looked at a couple pages back under the prospecting stage there. Let's say it's meta advertising, a fundamental channel. And if you went through that Facebook ads library search, you probably saw hundreds, if not thousands, of Reg D issuers. If they're running ads and every dollar, $2 they spend is a click, a visit to a landing page and their offering page, and then seeing 1%, 2% conversion rate, getting a $50, $100 cost per lead, they're probably in a good place. Lead quality is far more important than lead volume, and it's fine to pay more for a lead, potentially with more fields, something that's going to tie more to memory and show a more committed prospective investor. If you're seeing 1 out of 50 of those leads close, it's a $2,500, $5,000 acquisition cost. If you're running a 25K, 50K minimum Reg D investment, you may see 125K as your average order value, digital term, average investment amount. In that scenario, it's a good cost of capital. $100,000 minimum, those converting may see $260,000, $280,000 average investments. Again, good cost of capital. And if it's not happening, you don't give up. You don't say, hey, meta ads or whatever ad channel it is, whatever marketing vehicle you're using, are not effective. You want to simply manage to a point of results. You want to optimize. Good marketing talent shines in the optimization. It shines on identifying these drop-offs, evaluating what you could test out next while diagnosing the problem, and being able to do more of what's working, being able to operate at scale. That's what digital marketing really allows for, the ability to ramp up and scale. Mark, final content page. How do you build an investor audience that lasts?
Sure. I mean, and this is really very important. Um, you've succeeded in your raise, ranging from, a solid success to beyond your wildest dreams. Now what? I mean, you just sort of kick up your shoes, relax a little bit. I am afraid you cannot, because that success has brought you an incredibly valuable asset that may in fact stretch beyond the capital you've raised, and that is the audience you've developed. And you cannot just let that asset wither on the vine. And that means you need to do the things we have listed here. You track them, you document them, and you keep communicating with them. And sometimes that means directly, of course, depending on how significant investor they turn out to be. But also that just means, you give milestones about your company. Hey, this is what we're up to now. A lot of companies that have successful raises, guess what? They intend to do it again in the future. And who's going to be your best investors in the future? The people who've invested already. Think about it when we were talking about before about all the touch points that have to be satisfied in order to get a new investor. So many of those have already been accomplished. It may have gotten a little stale over time, but the less stale that you can make it, the better when the time comes around to get people investing. And so that's why it's just incredibly important to keep in touch, to keep them updated, to keep that appearance of motion going. Because again, that appearance of motion develops that trust between you. They see, hey, just so you all know, we're going to be at this convention center this weekend. If you invested, come on by, say hi. We'd love to meet you. They know in the back of their head, this is a company with things going on. You cannot just go dark and then just sort of appear like 2 years later, hat in hand, saying, hey guys, how's it all going? Remember the money you gave me before? No, that's not how you do it. And that means that the raise is not the end of your marketing journey with these people. In a real sense, it's just the beginning.
Well said. Have you defined your investor journey and the creative style to guide them? Big question to ask. Move with confidence. Get in touch with us. We welcome a warm marketing conversation anytime. Want to thank everybody for tuning in. Going to do a quick one-liner final note for everyone here. Mine is around this investor audience, and that we're working with funds that have goals 5 years, 10 years out of substantial volumes of investors so they can release a deal and have it filled day of. Your test today set the groundwork for that tomorrow, and our lives are only going to become more and more digital. Mark, Jack, any final statements as we hop here?
Sure, I'll keep it simple. Two things to remember, when you're making your content. One, what is its purpose? And two, how is it going to accomplish that purpose? So do not just make like this talks about my business in a cool way. What are you trying to do with each individual piece of content? This one stops them from scrolling. This one gets them to click to find out more about the investment page. This one convinces them that our business is solid, on solid ground and legitimate. And this one makes them believe in me. What is the purpose and how does it accomplish
it? And Jack, curtains.
Curtains, they're closing. One of the best compliments I ever got from the creative director here, Brendan, was looks pretty clean. And that's what it's all about, is making it look clean. Don't be afraid of negative space. Take the time and effort to put in to figure out your brand, what it looks like, so that when you're down the road, you're like, man, I kind of hate this font, or I hate these colors, or whatever it may be. Yeah, just stick to it. I'm always learning. I love learning about this, and it's fantastic you're joining you guys here today. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We will see you next month. Take care. Test, optimize, scale.